I think so.
This is only the end of the third week, my
End of the
friend.
third week. Okay.
Got six more to go.
Yay. All right. So before we get into the bills, just wanted to recap everybody real quick. The hearing that we had on Wednesday at 10 a.m. for the stormwater rule, that went off about as expected. We presented our lower cost regulatory alternative. There were two other lower cost regulatory alternatives presented that both more or less asked for the same thing, which is uh, an enlargement of the grandfathering provision that was in the rule. As drafted, the grandfathering provision only grandfathered projects that had active construction ERPs. And what the proposal, the two proposals presented would have expanded that to projects that had active conceptual ERPs and construction ERPs. And the argument, of course, is if you got a conceptual and it's a multi-phase and the department changes the rules in the middle of your, between phases 2 and 3, you got to do a redesign. That's not fair or not reasonable, and also not consistent with the prior major overhauls of ERP. In every prior case, anybody that had an active conceptual ERP was allowed to rely on that through the end of the conceptual. And so anyway, they got a call from John Coates last night. The department at the hearing didn't signal its intent to really do anything officially. It was when it closed the hearing, it said it's going to consider all the public comments received and the lower cost regulatory alternatives received, and then, make an announcement by Friday. And so I got a call last night. Coates said, and he called Kelly Cranford and probably others as well. He was, going down a call tree. They published a notice of change this morning. The website is up. So if you will go to, I'll put it in chat real quick. This website, at the bottom of the web page, there's a notice of change. I'll just go ahead and share it real quick. Down here. So notice of change, March 24th. The notice is a link to the actual legal notice. The rule language takes you to the FTP site where they actually have all the documents. And I've started to go through the revisions to Applicant's Handbook 1. John let me know, and this is going to be a highlight for most of our folks that have focused in on that, the 80/80 reduction provision, and you'll see that they dropped the nitrogen to 55 as the minimum stormwater treatment performance standards for all sites. So in new construction ERP, your post-development treatment performance needs to achieve a minimum of 55% TN, which means your standard wet detention BMP that really maxes out at about 43% is no longer sufficient. So you've got to get, you got to use BMP trains and use more BMPs than just your current standard BMPs. So that's the new big change. That's the new baseline. If you're in an OFW, it jumps up to 80 for TN, and that's a reduction from 95. All right, so it's a slight improvement, but still a significant increase. And then for impaired waters, it goes up to 80. 80 if it's in an impaired watershed with without an OFW, and it's 95 if it's an impaired water with an OFW in the same HUC. And then, as before, if there's a TMDL that has a specified load reduction, then the load reduction is going to apply. Load reduction below your pre-development loading. So that's the major change, folks. And what this does by filing this today is it starts a new 21-day clock. Let me see if I can go back over here and just put it up on the screen. And Anyway, so April 14th, I believe, by my math, will be the end of the public comment period. And at that point, if there are no yeah, this isn't it. This is the rule change. Sorry. Anyway, I'll find the specific lingo it'll be in the Federal Register, in the Florida Administrative Register here. But after the 21-day clock expires, if there's not a hearing or a challenge, then at that point, the department believes it can amend it on to its current ratification bill, which right now is sitting in the House and the Senate at their last committee stops, and amend it on at those last committees, pass them out of those committees, and take them to the floor. So that's the kind of the department strategy as announced or divined or interpreted based on conversations and announcements they made last week. Any questions on stormwater?
Hey, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
I figured there'd be a flurry. Yes.
Yeah,
I just
hey,
wanted
Jeff. Go ahead. I'm
say
sorry.
that- I'll make it brief, but I mean, we moved the needle. When we
Yeah.
first started talking to DEP, they were not getting off that 80%. So we didn't get to where we wanted, but we got somewhere. So thanks, Jeff. I mean, I know you did less than that on this, you and Alan, so, and a bunch of others. No, I'm happy that the needle was moved and we'll deal with it in the legislature.
All right, I see a question in the chat. How was the 55 determined? The 55 was pulled out of the air, but it was in the eyes of the department, because it was included in a TAC report as one of the alternatives. It believes that it is not. I'm showing you a screenshot from the TAC report that has this 55% load reduction of TN and 80% of TP, and the department, by citing the TAC, it believes it has, the support of technical experts from across all the industries, blah, 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 blah. And that makes it less than arbitrary, or maybe not arbitrary. Now, whether the TAC, arm wrestled over it and this was a compromise number, or whether there's any scientific merit behind the 55. I mean, I wasn't on the TAC, but my understanding is that was just kind of a gut call, a compromise position, with the understanding that the current wet detention BMP is 43. They need to do something more than 43. They thought 50 was too small and 60 was too high, and so 55 was their number. So it's still an arbitrary number, even if it's recommended by a group of technical advisors. And then, another thing that's going to be interesting for the department to defend is if it simply fell into this table right here, and this was its new rule proposal, then its defense would be, we used the numbers from the TAC report and those experts, they knew what they were doing. And so we just dropped their numbers in our thing. But as I just kind of recapped the numbers that they arrived at, I was a little surprised because they didn't use all of these numbers. This category and this category are not the same in their rule change this morning. This one is, but these two are not. So their defense of the TAC recommended it will fall apart by picking just this one and not these two. These two are both more stringent. I think I can do this. Maximizing my screen manipulation capability here. All right, so 5580, Is this first category? That's the same, check. But this next one is 80-90. And over here it's 80-95. So why 90? Why not 95? They're going to have to explain that. And then this next one, it's 80-95. And here it's 85-65. So just a head scratcher. It's like they started drinking last night and throwing darts at a dartboard. That's probably unfair.
But maybe
But
true.
accurate.
Doug Robeson, how will permittees demonstrate compliance as post-construction monitoring required? No, it's still a presumption of compliance. You will be utilizing BMP trains, which is a pre-approved calculator with assumed performance if you're using pre-approved BMPs. And those methodologies will yield the required percentage reduction, but you're still essentially using prescribed pre-approved BMPs in an assembly that achieves the predicted estimated result. So post-construction monitoring of water quality is not required, but there are significant new provisions that require more post-construction, O&M requirements. Those were strengthened, but it's not water quality testing. It's inspections and maintenance types of things. Anything else on stormwater? As this gets digested by folks today, just came out this morning, I'll reach out to the folks that are also watching this over at the home builders and AIF and all the other folks, DOT, etc., and see what they're thinking. If anybody else here is kind of if people are going to go along with this or if they're still going to fight it, I think we'd like to know, and so I'll pass that along. And if anybody else has that information, please pass it along.
I have not heard of anybody that's going to challenge it yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard either. It might be that the less confrontational approach would just be to prevent its ratification.
At this point, that's the easiest route.
What I'm not sure that would mean for the department is what's the reopener? Like why would they go back to rulemaking? It would still be a final rule, just with a delayed effectiveness. So I'm a little concerned about that strategy. So I think it may require more than just preventing the ratification. I think it may require the legislature sending a message back to DEP. We're not ratifying it for this reason. We want you to go back to the drawing board, or through its JAPSI committee, telling the department you exceeded your authority, something like that. Yeah, Kelly, in 2010, it stopped because well, we stopped it at DEP.
Yeah, I think, Jeff, that number one, I don't see any way this gets ratified this year. So whatever they do moving forward, I mean, I would assume they could withdraw this proposal and come out with a new proposal later on, or something.
They
to that
could,
effect.
but think about it from the department standpoint. They would say we have a final rule, just not effective because it hasn't been ratified, and nobody challenged it. So they would say what needs to be changed and why.
Yeah.
And so I think I think we've got a, if the legislature is simply silent, that the ratification bill doesn't move, then that's not a direction. That's just a,
So they would start to enforce a rule that hasn't been
No.
ratified.
no. I'm not suggesting there's any mechanism for this thing to become effective without ratification. I'm just wondering whether this rule would simply just sit on the shelf and the very next time the legislature's in session, it'd be back on the ratification agenda. Like if we wanted to actually fix the rule, change the rule, I don't know what the catalyst would be unless the legislature or JAPSI steers DEP into a different direction.
Yeah, my guess over here, and I mean, you know the setup, there's a ratification bill for a different DEP rule that, you know, we felt would be the vehicle if they tried to bring this one forward. I don't see them doing that. I mean, they may try, but I don't see it at all getting on that bill. There's just too many people against it. And, you know, we were told, I've heard from several members and myself, I've been told by several legislators that, you know, and they're basically saying, do not worry about this. It's not going to happen. And usually when they give it to you that straight, you can kind of take that to the bank. But so I mean, you know, stranger things have happened, but I don't see the push coming from anybody at an importance level that's going to get movement on it in the legislature this year. So, you know, I don't know exactly what their process is, but it looks like they're going to have to back up and make some changes or go back to the drawing board in order to get something through. Because if they bring the same thing next year, it's not going to be ratified next year either.
So I'm wondering if Overdorf or somebody like that, if the department gets a legislator to file an amendment to the current ratification bill at one of the last two stops or one of the last two committees where they're currently sitting, then in debate over that amendment before they vote on accepting or denying or rejecting the amendment, if we had legislators from the dais say, we think the department has exceeded its authority under 712. Those numbers were, you know, picked out of a hat. There wasn't scientific whatever. I mean, I just think they would have to hear why. Otherwise, they may be fat, dumb, and happy and just think, oh, we just ran out of time. We'll just try it again next year. Like we'll lose the year to go back and fix it if they think we filed a bill or we filed a rule. Nobody challenged the rule, which in their mind might equal consent. And we just ran out of time to get it ratified, and then they would just sit on it. And we don't want that to happen either, right? We want to make progress, I think, so that next year we have a correct rule that could be ratified. And so I'm really kind of talking out loud, Alan. I don't know how the right message can be sent to the department. It could be done by the governor saying, hey, you guys, you know, need to go back and redo that, or the secretary could decide to go back and redo it. It's just going to look bad, I think, if the department says this is our rule, and then later they say, oh, we just changed our mind without some signal. And I think the strongest signal, perhaps, and the safest signal for the department, because it wouldn't look like a caving, you know, quote, caving to the development interests, would be if JAPSI directs the department in a strongly worded letter to revisit these percentages because the statute doesn't support fixed percentages. Right. And then the department has something to hang its hat on to go back and redo the rule.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. You know, I would, you know, from my side of the street, I'd say I'd rather it just not be addressed at all for the rest of this session. But that makes life easier for me. But and they may very well do that. I mean, we just may never hear of it over here if somebody doesn't file an amendment. But you're saying you think it'd be better if somebody does challenge it. And I mean,
well, a challenge will bring that question before an administrative hearing officer, and they will rule on it. But a challenge will also be politically risky for the challenger, because theoretically you're poking a stick at the governor and the Blue Green Algae Task Force and a unanimous legislature who passed SB 712, the Clean Waterways Act. So you are, as a challenger, you would be challenging the environment. You'll be challenging clean water. You'll be, made to be a horrible person. Now, the challenge may come from the left, who might think this isn't nearly strong enough, but I doubt that. I think that's unlikely.
Well, I mean, I'll check with, you said you're gonna check with the home builders and them, and I'm sure Rusty will be, I've already sent, as soon as you saw it pop up, I sent Rusty a message and just said, hey, that the revised rules just dropped, and so I'm sure he'll be calling. So I'm interested to see what the home builders and the developers will do, and I always remember the group that really has not raised their head in any significant form is FDOT.
Well,
they've kind of, they're in the background and they're making a little noise in the background, but they haven't really weighed in on this, and it's all been about the development community. This is a huge deal for FDOT, and if FDOT puts the bug in the governor's ear, I think that helps out with him as well, because like I've said, he what he's told all of the different groups that have gone and talked to him, including us, is it's not us pushing it, and we don't like it because they're just going to say that it's going to raise the price of housing.
I concur. All right. In the next 12 minutes. Yeah, thanks, Michael. I agree. Let me just scroll through the highlights of the bills that are moving. There are environmental bills this year. This is ordered again in order of last action, not order of priority. So this included actions from yesterday. These are not particularly interesting bills right up top. I'm going to slow down when I get to some bills that are interesting to our folks. So House Bill 23 and its companion are both moving. This provides for wastewater operators by reciprocity from other states. This is just to address an identified shortfall in licensed water and wastewater operators. The phosphogypsum bills are moving in the House and Senate. This authorizes DOT to do a study on the use of essentially gypstack, phosphogypsum byproduct or byproduct from the fertilizer industry, phosphogypsum, utilizing it in road base and aggregate. So it authorizes a study, doesn't authorize the use. I have learned that this use would also have to be approved by EPA, so it's not something that you'll see. We won't be mining Piney Point and paving Manatee County with it anytime soon. Floating vessel platforms, it's probably not of interest to a lot of us, but it is moving. This prevents local governments from regulating floating vessel platforms. There's not much else in here. And this is for use of a floating vessel platform in place of a wet slip, an authorized wet slip. Skipping a few, because some of these just aren't really environmental. They're in here for land development folks. Flooding and sea level rise vulnerability studies. This is moving. I'm going to flip this up real quick. Remember, you guys can always click on the link and it'll pop up a bill summary where it is in its committee. So this is at its last committee. You can see that it's proceeded, with unanimous approval so far, and you can see amendments and what the final bill text is. But this is it's an enlargement of Resilient Florida grant programs. Gives more folks the ability to utilize the grants. Significantly, it adds water management districts to that list. There's a tweak to the sea level rise impact projection study, which was a statute and a rule that were passed a couple of years ago. And there's some other miscellaneous stuff in here. But anyway, that's an interesting bill. If you're in the resilient space, I encourage you to take a look. Flood damage prevention. This is has to do with the elevation, the minimum finished floor elevation for flood relief. or for meeting your firm requirements or whatever at the local level, it doesn't count against you if you raise your floor. It doesn't count against you on the height. If you have a maximum height limitation in your community, this is to address the perception that you're getting squeezed at the bottom in the name of flood prevention, but there's no relief at the top, and so your buildings are getting flatter. Anyway, this relieves that or allows you to offset it vertically. This administrative procedures bill is interesting because we were talking about just the department's rulemaking procedure on stormwater, and there's a lot of chatter about them kind of rushing it and not getting a statement of estimated regulatory costs out. There's really that's a black box procedure right now. The department really hasn't shared any information it's provided or it used to calculate the CERC. And then as it makes changes to the rule, like this notice of change this morning, there's at least I haven't seen a revised statement of estimated regulatory costs yet. This bill by Grawl and its companion, they're both moving. This would make the whole lower cost regulatory alternative and the statement of estimated regulatory cost process a public process. So the department would have to do hearings or hearings if requested, but would have to do notices and share all of that information with the public. So this is a very interesting bill. If this does pass and get signed and the department has to go redo this rule again, it would be subject to this expanded regulatory cost and lower cost regulatory alternative law, which I think would be good. There's the companion on the phosphogypsum. This is another interesting bill because it's a little reminiscent of the environmental train bills that we had a decade ago. 1632 and its companion have a number of interesting provisions to different types of folks in our community. So I encourage everybody to go through this and just scan it, because again, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. You've got some issues related to utilities, you've got issues related to aquifer recharge, you've got issues related to Board of Trustees, you've got issues related to the Indian River Lagoon program, and you've got and significantly, and this is a really big one that a lot of folks are noticing, you've got the prohibition of conventional septic tanks within BMAPs in effect for outstanding Florida Springs. So this is an enlargement of a limited prohibition just to priority focus areas that was passed, I want to say back in like 2018 or something like that. So this is an enlargement of that prohibition, and will essentially put a moratorium on conventional septic tanks, not the advanced and not, there are exceptions if you are in an area that's planned to have sewer. I think there are exceptions for that. But anyway, interesting. And there's a companion in the House that's also moving. Kind of getting down to the ones that I've either already talked about. Okay, well, I guess let me talk about this. So this is the ratification bill that the department has advanced to its last stop in the House and Senate. This is for unrelated rules. This is for an OSTDS rule that was promulgated last year at the end of its technical advisory committee process. There's not a lot that's really substantive in here, but it did trip the CERC, so it's in here for ratification. I don't mean to say it's not substantive. It's just doesn't create any new moratoria, doesn't create any new significant standards. It does have the private inspector provisions in it. So there's that rule, and then there's also a domestic wastewater facility package of rules that, or a single rule, but a number of rule changes to the domestic wastewater treatment facility rule. And those are the two rules in this ratification package. The department hinted last week that if it can get the stormwater rule in the proper posture, meaning it's final, it's been through the public notice, and it is ready for ratification, then a likely opportunity to get it to move this year is to amend it on to this at approps. And in the House, its last stop is this infrastructure strategic or strategies committee. It doesn't have an approach stop. So at that last committee reference, it can get an amendment to add that third rule. I think I'm going to stop there. There's some other bills on here, but we're running out of time, and biosolids bill is moving. But that's it for this week. Any questions? High hazard dam program. I haven't seen anything. For anybody who doesn't have a copy of this bill report, if you're on this email list, then you should have it in the invite and also in the email from Laura.
It's also on our website, Jeff.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And yeah, it's a great report. You can click on the links. They're all live. So it's a great report. And thank you, Laura, for putting that together each week. If anybody has bills, so somebody mentioned a question about a high hazard dam bill. I have not seen it. There is some high hazard dam program changes in the stormwater rule, but I'm not aware of a bill. If anybody has a bill that they are interested in that isn't on our list, please email it to me and Laura, and we'll put it on the list for next week. And with that, sir, I'll turn it over to you, Alan.
Yeah, just real quick. I just wanted to, all the people on the call, if those of you that came to Tallahassee for PE days this week, thank you very much. There was a lot going on with the hearing on Wednesday, and we had, approximately 150 members and some folks from DOT that were walking around the Capitol. I think it's 63 different confirmed meetings with legislators. Obviously, we had a couple of receptions thrown in there and some other things, but we got a lot of good info back from our members and those that make the effort and the money to get up here. We truly appreciate it. And Laura has posted up in the chat a copy of the leave behind that we had for the legislators, and I had her go ahead and put our general bill report up that we use in the update that happens just prior to this one. So those are in the chat if you need them. But thank you, everybody. We really appreciate the effort of everyone this week.
Great job, guys. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
too.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Thank you.